My name is Dr. Evan S. Riley, and I'm an ER physician at Memorial University Medical Center in Savannah, Georgia. To tell you anything else about myself seems, well, unnecessary right now. I say this only because, as my fellow doctors in their respective fields know, our job pretty much is our life. It's very demanding and extremely stressful, and only with years of sacrifice and determination do we build our personal lives around our job as the people supposed to make you well. I'm not saying I don't have a life outside of Memorial University Medical Center, but in regards to the story I'm about to tell you, all of that seems irrelevant. The story I'm about to share with you is greater than myself and possibly the most terrifying yet important thing you'll ever hear. And depending on where you are and what you've heard or seen, you might already know that things are happening, with the worst yet to come. The date was September 20th, 2015, and it was a relatively routine night in the ER at the hospital. And by routine, I mean the usual gaggle of patients suffering from their minor sprained ankles to folks coming in on stretches with life-threatening wounds. It was always a mixed bag, and you finally became accustomed to being around so many sick and injured that one becomes desensitized to the amount of psychological trauma that you may endure as a tending physician. As an ER doctor, you have to have thick skin, and being one for 3.5 years, these people trained me to have skin as thick as an elephant's. My shift started just like any other, with no shortage of people to attend to and the staff running amok. A few hours in, however, a senior nurse by the name of Gina waddled over to me quickly, clipboard in hand, as I read over the chart of a middle-aged man brought in for chest pains. As I scrambled a note down, I noticed her eyes were wide and she seemed to be out of breath. Her hands were shaking and she gripped the clipboard, trying to retain any bit of composure she had left. I quickly set down the chart, motioning to another nurse to explain the prescription to the patient at hand, and I quickly pulled the other nurse aside. "Gina, what's the matter? Are you all right?" I asked quietly, studying her face. She shook her head. "Doctor, you're not going to believe this. I've worked at this hospital for almost 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this. You need to come with me immediately." "Gina, whatever's going on, I may take a minute to get over there with you. I have 2 more patients who..." She grabbed my arm, but in a way in which someone does when they're afraid and need consolation. "Evan, please, you need to come right away." Realizing that Gina wouldn't be all worked up over something so trivial, especially in a hospital setting, I nodded and motioned to her to show me the way. She hurried ahead of me, and I walked briskly behind her, silently contemplating what may have stirred up such a response from her. I noticed she guided me towards a room with a security officer posted right outside, speaking quietly with another nurse and 2 paramedics. I cleared my throat as I approached, adjusting the glasses on the bridge of my nose. Upon sight, the group stopped chatting and acknowledged me, their faces a mixture of fear and relief. One of the paramedics approached me, glancing around nervously. "Oh, thank God, Dr. Riley. Thank you for getting here so quickly. You need to see this patient immediately," he said, his voice shaking. I peered inside the room. A young woman was laying on the hospital bed, breathing slowly, her eyes closed. I looked at the staff. "What's her story?" I demanded. The paramedic looked at his partner, then back at me. "Her name is Christina Worthington, 22 years old. We attempted to bring her in on a 911 call, doctor. She was suffering from a skin infection on her arm of some kind. Real nasty. She was in acute pain and extremely fatigued, muttering incoherently. Almost upon arrival, she went into cardiac arrest, and within seconds, she died." Confused, I looked at the woman who appeared to be sleeping in the hospital room. "You mean she flatlined and you brought her back upon entry?" The other nurse, Nora, stepped forward. "No, Dr. Riley. We couldn't revive her. Gina and I checked all of her vitals also, and she was gone." Slightly irritated by my own confused state now, I ran a hand through my hair and sighed. "I'm looking at a woman laying on that bed now. She is breathing. This is not what dead people do." "Dr. Riley, this is why I came for you. I don't understand what's going on with this young lady, but it's something I've never seen before. I came to get you for an official declaration of death, even without our knowledge of the situation, when we heard her stirring. We thought we had made a mistake, and that we possibly called it too soon, but checking her again, we found that nothing had changed. There was no heartbeat, no sign of brain activity. Nothing," Gina elaborated. "Gina, what are you saying? The patient is moving and breathing whilst deceased?" I asked. Gina looked at the young woman. "I don't know how, but yes." "I've also never seen a dead person come back to life. Have you?" the paramedic's partner interrupted. My mind now riddled with more questions, I slowly walked into the room and approached the young woman, blocking out any commentary from the hospital staff. I could feel the nurses, paramedics, and security officer watching my every move, waiting for me to see, or hopefully explain, what terrified them so. In my years of medical schooling and dealing with post-mortem anomalies, I knew that science could be much stranger than fiction sometimes, so that comforted me in a way. There had to be a reasonable explanation for why this young woman, who by all accounts was deceased, yet seemed to sleep peacefully in front of me. Her gown was slightly lowered on her right ankle, exposing her bare skin. I felt it and gasped. She was cold to the touch. Unnerved a bit, I cleared my throat. "Miss Worthington?" When she didn't respond, I proceeded to check for the telltale signs of death any physician would. Aside from her strange respiration, there was absolutely no pulse nor heartbeat. It was like a car driving without an engine, and it boggled me how she seemed to be breathing without any oxygen sending the signals to her brain, supplying her lungs with air. I looked back at the staff and they waited quietly, determined to know what in the world was going on. Putting on gloves, I examined her arm, and I noticed the skin infection the paramedic had mentioned earlier. It was isolated to her left forearm, curiously accompanied by what appeared to be an incision of some sort within a symmetrical triangular design that to mind no medical tool could produce, even through laser surgery. Aside from the weird incision, the angry rash consisted of blisters that oozed a strange purplish pus that seemed to bubble as I touched it. Flabbergasted, I removed the gloves and washed my hands vigorously. I could hear the nurses and paramedics whispering furiously, and I continued to try to zone them out. My brain was rattled by the sensory information as it was that their words would only add more to the weight of my impaired focus. I waited a moment, watching her chest rise and descend slowly. Suddenly, she shifted, and then finally opened her eyes. They were glossy, a pale blue in which her pupils were barely distinguishable. I gasped as she turned to face me, her seemingly dead eyes fixed on me. Using my medical pen light, I quickly shined it across her eyes, looking for pupillary reflexes characteristic of clinical death. In appearance, the eyes fit the mold, but at the same time, her eyes followed me so fluidly it began to frighten me. As I checked her, she began to smile, and that bothered me so much I stopped my exam. Standing upright, I cleared my throat. I gazed at the young woman. "Christina, I'm Dr. Riley. How are you feeling right now?" Continuing to smile, she nodded. "I feel fine, doctor. May I leave?" The way in which she spoke reminded me of a cinematic interpretation of an angelic being, and her odd demeanor further created an atmosphere of discomfort in the room. I sighed deeply. "Well, Christina, that remains to be seen. I'll be honest with you, I'm concerned about you right now, and I would very much like to run some tests to evaluate what may be happening to you." She stopped smiling, yet did not look any less amused. "Nothing is happening to me, doctor. I'm here now, and soon, more of us will be here too." What she was saying sounded like delirious rambling, yet she spoke with such an authoritarian confidence her words held sway over the entire room. I could feel her eyes bore into mine, and for a moment I had to look away. I maintained my composure and motioned to my staff. "Christina, not too long ago, you gave my staff quite a bit of a scare. I would like to consult more of my peers concerning your current medical state. I don't quite know how to tell you this, but my physical exam shows me that—" I never got the chance to finish what I was saying, because what I saw next completely drained my brain of any rational explanation it may have had left concerning this young woman's condition. As the staff and I watched in horror, the young lady's eyes rolled back into her head, and her jaw opened up as if it were a snake attempting to swallow a large egg. Her teeth were long and serrated. A thick, purplish tongue wiggled between them. We all screamed in terror, and she crawled off the hospital bed like an insect, pouncing to the ceiling like a jungle cat. Her limbs cracked and she shuffled about above us, snapping her jaw and periodically spitting what appeared to be an acidic substance at us. I was nearly hit in the face by some of the stuff when one of the paramedics pulled me back in time, and it instead ate away at the floor. "Dr. Riley, we are here," she growled, staring at us with those eerie pale eyes once more. "We are here for all of you." I collapsed backward into the group as the security officer was about to open fire at the creature. He never had a chance as she spit the acidic glob on his hands, and we all watched as his hands melted away to the floor like ice cream on a hot summer day. He cried in agony, collapsing to his knees as he looked at the bubbling stumps where his hands once were. At that moment, we all ran to the door, tripping over ourselves to escape this horrid creature. I didn't dare look back, and we all piled into the hallway, which was now littered with staff and patients alike, fearful of what the hell was going on in the room that we just ran out of. I looked back, and I saw the creature crash through the window, slithering out into the night, disappearing like a gruesome phantom that nobody would ever believe was there. I spotted the security guard laying motionless on the floor, and I realized that he had gotten a second dose of her acidic saliva. His face was nearly gone. WSAV News 3 Savannah reported that the security officer had died as a result of a freak chemical accident that night. Their details were sketchy and left too many questions unanswered that if you watched the broadcast you'd think they were amateur journalists fresh out of middle school giving you the scoop. The truth is, something happened before we got the story. Even before the police questioned us, somebody covered everything up. I know what you're thinking. What the hell is going on here? Well, let me explain. After our terrifying encounter with whatever Christina Worthington turned into, as the police arrived and the media circus followed, 3 men in dark suits accompanied by military personnel arrested Gina, Nora, the 2 paramedics, and I immediately. Trumping the local authorities with their badges and their declaration that this is a federal investigation, we were taken to a wing of the hospital where we were interrogated. They were feds all right, but they told us that they were a classified subdivision of the CIA, and that they already knew something we didn't know about what we saw. Now, what I'm about to say may sound completely insane, but it is true. Please believe me. To make something up like this would discredit me as a physician and pretty much make me a nutcase by default, and they knew that as well. When it was my turn to be interrogated, there came a point where these agents briefed me. They revealed to me what they knew about what I saw, and how absolutely nobody would believe me if I tried to go to the press or anyone else about it. They told me that if I valued my life and those I care about, I should keep my mouth shut and forget what I saw. Period. They informed me that they would provide the police, and the press sans the local authorities, an approved story about the dead security officer and the missing patient. That they would take care of everything. During this intimidating exchange of information, all I could think about was how nothing made sense anymore. Everything had changed. After my briefing, I was told to quietly resign due to emotional stress, and that I would receive a federal pension for the rest of my life as long as I stuck to their agenda. They said my colleagues would receive the same deal, and that I needn't worry about them. I meekly agreed, and signed a document which had so many blacked out words that I couldn't actually tell what it meant. All I know is that it was my contract. What happened that night in the hospital was something I can't explain, but I'm reminded of periodically as I watch the daily news. Even those agents can't cover up all of it. You've probably been seeing the reports too, and after looking further into the incident I was a part of, I can say without a doubt that what Christina Worthington told me is coming to fruition. They are here, and each day I read about bodies going missing from morgues, people coming back from the dead, and witnesses saying that the angels from above visited them in the middle of the night, telling them more are coming. That symbol, that odd surgical design on her forearm, is popping up everywhere. The cases are multiplying and going more widespread. Just today, I heard of 2 accounts in Russia and 1 out in Hong Kong. The dead are coming back to life, yet they're not dead. I'm not even going to throw out zombie because it's not what's going on here. There's no outbreak of flesh-eating walking dead. No. These are humans infected with something that turns them into these ethereal, monstrous beings that belong to another world. As I spread this around the internet, send this letter to the media, and even tell random strangers I encounter on the road, I pray that you also help me by doing the same. Be aware of who you know and how well you know them, and don't buy into what the news is telling you. The people coming back from the dead are not on drugs, nor is it the fault of the physicians being mistaken about their deaths. They're human beings affected with some form of unknown alien infection, all related to the symbol they share on their bodies. This infection turns them into vessels for these hosts, and they transform them into these beings. If you see anyone or know anyone mentioning that symbol, stay far away from them. If they're sick and bear that symbol, then it's far too late for them. There is no cure for this, and I don't believe one is desired. They don't want a cure. They want this pandemic to consume us. They want our world, and our government is playing a pretty big part in this. I know that because I'm sharing this with you, I've sealed my fate. I will be hunted down and killed. That is why you need to be vigilant. Watch the news, but don't listen to their stories. Read between the lines, and there lies the truth. I don't care if they say these dead people go missing or weren't dead to begin with. That's not what's going on here. These are people being infected with something and are changing from the inside out. They're multiplying, and they're coming for us all. My name is Dr. Evan S. Riley, and this is the truth they don't want you to know. They're here, and soon, very soon, we will all be infected and turned into them. Our world is being invaded by them, and it's only a matter of time before they won't hide the truth anymore. They'll simply look at you with those pale, dead eyes and welcome you to your new life.